Good morning, FC3, and thank you so much for joining us today as we celebrate our Founders Day. So many of us, including myself, we were either at the beginning, too young to know what happened in the very beginning, or we met along this journey a little bit later. But today I wanted to be able to interview my mom, Pastor Kay, and my uncle, Elder Barry, as they were two of the founding members to Bring You First Christian. So just to give a little background, like for myself, I was only 3, Ricky was only 9, so we don't remember anything. We have grown up here, and that's about as much as we know. So what was it like for you all who was with Dad? Like, how did we get to this? How did we get to let's start a church?
Well, it started really with he was feeling uncomfortable. We were in the United Methodist system, and there were certain, I guess, doctrinal beliefs and so forth that didn't necessarily line up with what he believed and how he understood the scriptures. And so he decided, he just felt that he needed to, leave. And so we didn't know at first where we were going. He just said, look, I'm gonna resign, and for right now we're just gonna go back home to our home church, which is Choose. We'll go back to our home church and we'll just wait there and see, what God has for us. So in the meantime, we were living here in this basement. We moved in here after my father passed, with Granddad. And we were living here, and he had gone out on a couple of interviews. He had interviewed with the AME Church, he had interviewed with the Baptist Church. But he still wasn't quite sure which way to go. That's when he said, maybe we just go back to our home church. So in the midst of all of that, I went to him and I just said, because I just really felt, really heavy, and I was like, I said, Rick, I don't think you're supposed to be going somewhere to go sit down for now. I mean, you are a pastor, and so I think that's what you're supposed to be doing. And so he looked at me and he gave this big sigh of relief. And he said, Karen, I didn't know how to tell you this, but I felt that the Lord was telling me to start a church, but I didn't know how to say it to you because you and I made a pact back in '84 that we would not ever start a church. That's something that we would not do. We were both in agreement. We're not doing that. So he didn't know how to tell me, but as it would have it, Lord, I guess it'll work with my little heart, and I said it to him, and so that freed him to and that's what we're gonna do.
It's kind of funny, in my own personal life, I was looking for a church. So he did eventually come up to me, and that's when he told me he felt that God had led him to start a church. And after he told me that Karen was on board for it, I said, okay. I said, well, where do we go from here? I mean, to start a church. And then for me, when you think of starting a church, my mind goes to the storefront churches.
Right.
Some storefront churches remain storefront churches forever.
Okay, so with us being back in the basement where it all started, like, what was that meeting when y'all first came together, like the board?
Well, the initial meeting, there wasn't a board.
It wasn't a board,
okay.
right?
It was just a group of us that called together.
But when we gathered here, he was casting a vision.
Okay.
We weren't the board. He had just called together just some of us. It was Pastor Glenn McQueen, Camilla Holmes, Denise Mills, Stephanie Beckett.
Was Uncle Craig in the initial?
Craig was in, yes.
Okay.
Craig, he was in the first one. Like Mother Maggie, Arlene, Ann came like in March. Like we started in February. So
Okay.
The first meeting was in February. Next meeting was in March. And that's when they came on board. And I think Zena and Joe came on board around. So the rest of them came on board within March.
Okay. So was he meeting to, I guess, get to know what you all thought, or was he meeting to help execute it?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was all of the above. So awesome thing about the board is the original members are the original members, and we're still here.
Yeah.
And the only separation has been through death. But through the 30 years, the original board are all still at First Christian.
So in a way, I guess you could say that you all follow the vision more than the man.
That's the key, you know, when and his death proved that, you know. His death proves or shows who was there for the vision of the church or who was there for the man. And let me just clarify that too, because sometimes a person may be there for the man and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. It means that was the part that they were supposed to play in that whole process. You know what I mean? So a lot of it had to do with how you left. And that was a difficult time. That was a really, really, really difficult time. Johnson your father had been sick for a while, which you knew. It really started in 2000.
Right.
When he finally passed, when he did pass. And then, you know, after I stepped forward, that's when the winds
And the waves
and the waves
started flowing.
We never realized the importance of the board was when that transition did happen, and all of the weight of everything that was happening didn't have to lay on one person.
Gotcha.
Even though Pastor Queen stepped up, thank God, it was like the interim for a period of while. He still had the board supporting him, even when Pastor Kay got the call and spoke up. She had the board that supported her. Now, the board was solid. It shook. Don't get me wrong. It shook us. But the board was solid, and the board was the board even afterwards. Even though it went through the transitioning and the changes that all happened and what have you, the board was still the board. It's like God chose the right people to be on that board.
Yeah, I was just about to say that because, I mean, you all had to grow with each other all those years just to be that strong to get us to where we are now.
Yeah, it was critical. And like Barry said, you don't realize how critical the board was and the individuals on the board, those original board members at that particular time, because the board had crumbled. You know, the board had scattered or whatever. I don't know. You know, we were in a brand new church, had just moved in on New Year's Eve, and here you're talking about 3 months later, the founding pastor's gone, so you have a church that was really built and centered around a particular leader. You know what I mean? So I don't know what would have happened if the board had crumbled, as he said.
But as the years went by, we had, like, even with the original 12, as the years went by, God sent us people that, you know, because, you know, when you're a close group, you're kind of leery of anything coming to add to that group or whatever. And I remember Ricky telling us, there are people who's going to come into this ministry that is going to help this ministry. You have to be open to that. It can't be just us.
But like Barry said, you know, with the board, with the expansion of the board, that's what we did. We ended up expanding the board so that you can bring on fresh blood. And I mean, over the years, we've always had good people on the board. Even, you know, right now we have great people who are on the board.
So my last thing, I guess I would ask, is there anything that you want to say to the members? I guess.
Now, all I say to the members, you're in a good place. I remember 30 years ago, we were wondering who was going to be members and what the makeup of our church is going to be like. And now to be 30 years later and see just what God had planned for us. And not knowing what He has planned for us 30 years from now, just know that you're in the right place. And we are so grateful to the members that has chosen to work within this ministry and being a part of this ministry.
I guess what I want to say, first of all, be directed to our original board members, and that is God called each one of them to be a part of this mission, to be part of God's vision, and we're so grateful that you answered that call. And we know it was on point, we know it was the right call because you were here, and you're still here with your prayers and what you contribute to this congregation. And these 30 years, we would not have made it if the commitment that you had, first of all to God and then to this congregation, we wouldn't be here. So I just thank God every single day for you and for all of the other board members, or everyone who's ever served as a board member. You were part of this. You're part of this vision that God has called. And you know, one thing people would say once Johnson had transitioned, you know, they would say, well, the vision, you know, you're here, you're still carrying on the vision, you're carrying on his vision. First Christian was not Pastor Johnson's vision. First Christian was God's vision, and God gave it to him. And so the visionary never left, because the visionary is God. And what the visionary did was he allowed us now to take the baton and to run with it. And our job now, as original board members, original members, is to prepare the next generation to carry that baton until whenever Jesus comes back and calls all of us home. So with that said, happy Founders Day to all of the original board members. Thank you so much, and we hope you enjoy this day.
Happy Founders Day, everybody. I guess we're the next generation, so let's see what the next 30 years do for us too. See you guys.